Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy for today. I'm Nigel Umbayak, one of the customer success managers here at KETIV, and your host for AVA for today and just about all other days. So it might be asking, it's like, hey, wait, Nigel, you presented a couple of weeks ago on the same thing. What are you talking about developing your company's product data management strategy as you're reading here on the board? And just to let you guys know, this is a three-part series. We're on part 2. So if you missed part 1, don't worry, it's not a prerequisite for this course. You can go back and watch that. That recording should be up on our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/KETIV Technologies. You might be wondering why there are 2 cameras up right now. And that's because, again, like we were with our first portion of the series, we're here with our good friend Mark Saro from Autodesk. Mark, how's it going?
I am good. Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you again.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure to have you on. It's definitely a joy to have you on for these AVAs. You've done a couple in the past, yes, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing this one and more in the future. So Mark's from the Autodesk team. He's one of the product marketing managers, came from a technical background there at Autodesk. That's how I know Mark. But Mark's got a ton of knowledge. He's worked with a ton of customers through a lot of these problems and is a great resource to be able to share some of the business benefits of going to a formal product data management platform. So without further ado, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat panels that you have on your respective viewing devices. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it to Mark, and let's get going.
Thank you. So one thing I will add to this is that I'm from Montreal, so I might have a thick French-Canadian accent. I apologize for this. So if there's anything that you didn't understand, just use the chat window, and it will be our pleasure to answer that. So the first thing I like to do is level set on the meaning of product data management, or PDM. In my experience, people generally have different views on what PDM is and what it can be used for. So for this particular conversation, let's define PDM as a strategy for managing your product-related data and information, along with your engineering processes, all in one single location. Like Nigel said, PDM comes down to 3 things: data, people, and process. Last time we were together, we talked about data, and it's all about managing the files and metadata that make up the source code for your product. Process is about the challenges with maintaining standard procedures throughout development. But today, we will focus on people and the challenges your engineering and non-engineering staff or non-technical staff have while developing the product. This slide is maybe one of my favorite ones. It's quite an eye chart, but the product complexity has increased, but the business of developing and delivering new products has also increased across multiple dimensions. The market is more dynamic, with 70% of companies saying that customer needs or requirements are changing more rapidly. About 1/3 say that it has increased significantly. Manufacturing products has also gotten more dynamic. Over 1/3 have increased contract manufacturing, but more telling is that the majority have experienced more dynamic supply chains. 56% say they have more frequently supply chain or manufacturing partners changes. Half of them have seen continued increase in globalization and the demand for customization. Each of these is challenging, but it's important to recognize that these challenges are happening at the same time. You don't get to choose which one. They are all happening.
Absolutely. And some of them are happening at the same time. It's all continuing, right? So it's a lot of these challenges, whether they be these ones, exact ones, or other ones within the data and the people and the process of all of your engineering stuff. Those are the things that just happen all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? We've seen it, we've talked to customers about it, and we want to provide some solutions for it.
Just think about the team that you're working with. Back in, not even back in the days, 10 years ago, you would work next to your coworker. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure you have colleagues all around the globe. So that's just one challenge of all the challenges. Now, for those that work with CAD files every day, it's probably no surprise to see finding the right information and wasted time searching for data are challenges reported by almost 1/2 of respondents. Many companies struggle with the basics of PDM, controlling accessing and sharing product data. Now, let me ask you, has your company lost product data? What did you do to overcome the loss? And I'm pretty sure, I want to bet my last hair, that you recreated the data. Has your company started manufacturing using the wrong outdated data? And what was the value of that? Now think about it. If you're starting cutting metal using the wrong revision of a file, it's not just the metal cost. It's the work, the time you spend on recreating data or searching for data. There's a lot of costs associated with, producing with the wrong revision.
Absolutely, and that's one way you can kind of quantify, right? It's not just the material loss, right? It's all of the overhead. Especially say you start a project using the wrong drawing file, right? Maybe you walk your drawing files to your shop floor, right? At some point, right, you've got a static version of the file, right? It is this printed, maybe the paper document that you carry over to the shop floor. At that point, that file is static. Any changes made to the file on the CAD side aren't reflected on that drawing. So if that drawing isn't the finalized version, or maybe you revise it, there's a outdated version of that file somewhere on the floor. And I've seen it more often than not, that causes issues for companies. Whether or not they can quantify it or not is another issue entirely. But it's definitely something that needs to be addressed if that is something that happens to you. It's a really easy way to I wouldn't say waste money, but
it is. Unfortunately, it is. It is the perfect example of wasting money and time.
Absolutely. And I think time is a lot more valuable sometimes.
Yeah, because that's pretty much the only thing we cannot make.
Absolutely. Can't make time.
Now, let's explore a few of the root causes of core data management challenges to see if any of these sound familiar. Permissions are not in place for accessing, editing, or viewing files. So anybody that can get to one of those shared folders is able to do whatever they desire. Many companies use paper-based documentation for key engineering processes such as change and release. Information is only valuable if you can find it, and the filing cabinet alone is oftentimes enough of a barrier to keep people from reusing the aggregated knowledge inside. The process of copying design file is inefficient, which can easily dissuade engineers from doing it. Time is wasted repairing broken links or renaming files, so it may be quicker or less frustrating to just design something new. Engineers that are working on the same file end up overwriting each other's work.
Absolutely. And these are some of just the most common causes that we've collected, right? And these are just a couple of them, right? There's probably maybe another 4 or 5 of them they're just common causes of lost data and data reuse. And this is something that's really easily fixable by using formal data management strategies, right? A lot of the organizations that I work with, and I know Mark worked with in the past as he was, from the technical side as well, is the most, I would say there's 2 aspects of your organization, engineering organizations, that are the most valuable. One being the people who work for you, right? Your engineers, your staff, all of those people. You want to make sure that, you have the best that you can get. And then the second is that data, right? That is the lifeblood of engineering organizations, right? Is the data itself. If you don't have your data, you lose your data somehow. That is your intellectual property. That is your stuff. And you want to make sure that that's secure and you're leveraging it to its highest capabilities. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about some of these common causes of lost data and lack of data reuse today, and how to alleviate those. Whether you're using a formal data management strategy already, like Vault, or not, some of these can apply to you, and you can leverage some of these strategies even if you don't want to use Vault itself. But I'd be curious to understand why if you're not. So let's move on. I think this is where I take the reins. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these common issues, right? So problem numero uno, there's no permissions or restrictions in place for accessing, editing, or viewing files. Anyone can see anything, so that's the one extreme, or no one can see anything is the other extreme, right? So oftentimes when I'm talking to customers who maybe haven't adopted a formal strategy for this, they're using Dropbox, they're using OneDrive, this is how I shared this presentation with Mark actually. Then maybe they're using emails to access if you share files around the office, but more often than not, it's a network drive. And what happens with the network drive is you're limited to Windows permissions, right? And so the Windows permissions aren't super customizable. Sometimes they're a little finicky, things along those lines. And so what PDM allows you to do, and by PDM, I mean product data, or product data management, it allows you to give access controls and permissions, right? So you can set up what files different particular groups in your organizations or what individuals from that organization have access to. And then give you a level of access as to what they can do in terms of working with that file, whether or not that person can simply read the file, whether that person can modify that file, or even more importantly, right, whether or not that person can delete the file. I think deleting files is a real big problem. If you delete a file from your network folder, right, maybe your IT has like a snapshot and they can restore it. Or maybe you can find it in the recycle bin and maybe restore it. But sometimes that file's, and what if you don't realize it's gone until 6 months later, right? You're not gonna be able to restore that file. So
the almighty drag and drop, accidental drag and drop of a folder inside another folder.
Oh, I love that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. Or Nigel, how many times have you seen people just copy pasting folders on their own desktop or computer because the network was too slow and they wanted to have, the full performance?
Absolutely. We're going to get to that later with duplicate files. That's also a big deal. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We got some recordings that I'll go ahead and speak over. It's probably the easiest way to share this and the easiest way for you guys to see it later if you want this PowerPoint presentation. So let's get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this before we get going. And what this is this is something that we use for every company we help build lifecycle management for. And so what lifecycle management allows you to do is, you've probably heard the term, this file's released, right? And by released, it's sent to manufacturing or it's sent to the next stage and you're done working on it, right? At that point, you want the file to be quote unquote locked and you don't want anyone to work on it because that is the version of the file that's going to be manufactured. And so when you're developing a lifecycle strategy for your organization, you want to be able to understand and give the right access to the right people at the right time. And so these big 4 boxes, right, reference the states in which files can be at that we've defined, right? You can add more, you can add less, whatever you want to do. That first one, WIP, work in progress. You've got review, release, and quick change. I'm going to go over this chart a little bit really quickly. Those arrows, as you can see on the key down at the bottom, denote who can make those transitions, right? So there's certain people who can release a file, right? People who review that file and approve it. Not everyone can go from release to work in progress, right? Because maybe you want to reserve that to people of authority somehow. And you want certain people to be able to reject files, so on and so forth. So that's what some of those arrows are for. And then if you see there's R, M, D, and X, and what that lets us know is, and we developed this for a lot of organizations, and I'd like to see other people do this as well. R stands for read, M modify, D delete, and then X I believe is cannot see. And so what that means is you're defining what groups or what people can see, modify, or delete the files at each of these states. And we'll show you how Vault kind of manages all of this. And as you can see, we got a couple of groups here. So as this video rolls through, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into Vault here in a couple of seconds. Hopefully I timed this all correctly. Pretty sure I did.
You did.
Did I pause it? Here we go. We're into Vault. Cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the settings. The first thing you're going to want to do to be able to control this for users is to be able to create the users and create those groups, because you can't apply security to a group you don't have. So you want to make sure that you've got groups in your Vault, things like administrators, engineering, sales, technical. All of these people have different roles in the company. All of them should have different effective access on the files. So what are we going to do after those groups are created? We're going to generate some life cycles. And this is something that's in Vault Workgroup and Vault Professional to be able to control the basic lifecycle process of the files within your Vault, right? There's 2 ways to do this, item-based and file-based. Here we're going to show this as file-based. Let me go ahead and skip here. We're going to edit this lifecycle. And if you remember on that chart, we had a 4th state called quick change. So what we can do is we can go ahead and add that. And the lifecycles are all fully customizable within Vault. And so you can manage what states you have, what transitions you can and cannot make. Pretty much everything on that flow chart you can go ahead and represent here within Vault. So we're going to go ahead and create this quick change state. We're going to go ahead and define it as, hey, there's small clerical changes to release files. And quick change, I want to pause this for one moment. And quick change is something that a lot of organizations don't use already that I think is really powerful. If there's a clerical change you need to make, for example, something that doesn't affect the fit, the form, fit, and function of a file. Maybe it's a misspelling on the title block. God forbid you misspell my name on the title block as the approver or the engineer for this, and you want to change that. But you don't want to go to Rev C, right? There's no reason to go to Rev C if all you need to do is change my name on the title block. So there's this state called quick change that we can quickly go to, make that clerical change from released and then go back into released because nothing changed in regards to the form, fit, and function, right? We didn't need to create a change order to change my name on the file. So that's what that quick change state is for. I know we're probably going to get a couple of questions about what that is and how to go ahead and use that. So this is where the security comes in, and I'm going to go ahead and pause this. Within Vault is we've done a couple of webinars all about this. If you want to look at how to generate these lifecycle states and kind of manipulate them, go on, so on and so forth, this is a clip from one of those. So if you just search our YouTube channel, you'll find this. But here, as the cursor is hovering, right, those are the names of the groups that I've applied to here. So administrators, engineering, product development. And we talked about effective access to the files in this particular state. So read, modify, and delete function, right? So maybe we don't want certain people to delete it. Maybe we only want certain people to modify it. Maybe we don't want a certain group of people to see it. So for example, a file that's in work in progress that your engineers are working on, you definitely, if it's being worked on and it's not completed, you definitely don't want sales or manufacturing to see that file in most cases. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But in more often than not, you don't want those people to see the file. This is how you control that so that, you know, the wrong things don't get built. And that's the last thing we want to happen. So you can go ahead and make some of those changes, right? And so it's a simple drop down within Vault, and we'll go ahead and just allow these people to modify the file in this quick change state. And then maybe we don't want them to delete it, or maybe only administrators can delete this file. Generally in quick change, no one can delete the file. So back to the chart, right? Let's go ahead and take a look. We've added some of these state changes for our modify and delete. So we got read 1 to 3, which is administrators, engineering, product design. Let me turn this guy off. And then delete, we've got none, right? No one can delete the file, and then people can't see the file. So just keep that in mind as well. So let's go ahead and move through. And I'm transferring files to my Fusion drive right now. Let me just move this, this over so we don't have to see that. And we'll jump back into the presentation here. Let's move real quickly. Cool. So now that we've gone through that, right, let's go ahead and take a look at the second obstacle that a lot of people see, which is the rationale behind your design decisions and your change orders are not easily accessible. We were talking about this before. ECOs, ECNs, some of those are done through paper. Those can get lost, hard to track. It's hard to look back and be able to kind of audit yourself and figure out, hey, why did we make this particular change? And so a solution for that, right, using some formal PDM is when managing your engineering processes within the Vault itself, everything is documented digitally. So you've got a full history of what happened to the file, what happened to these change orders, so on and so forth. So people can go ahead and search through all of that to easily understand things like past design decisions and rationale for key decisions when changing files during previous, development cycles, so on and so forth. And so the ECO process is something that's available in Vault Pro to be able to manage it internally in the Vault. And that's, I think, one of the most powerful parts of all of this, right, is the ECO process can control the gates of who can edit these files, what needs to happen during those states, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like before we get started here. And so in this case, the example we're using is item-based life cycles. And we're going to go ahead and generate an ECO for this particular file. Maybe I got something warranted. Maybe I got a couple of field failures and I need to change the design. So in this case, we actually want to make a copy of this design. We want to make a new iteration of it, but we want to change it. So we're going to create a change order for it. And we're going to go ahead and run through this. So I've got these files And maybe I want to attach a PDF here, right? Maybe a sales order for the same file, but configured differently. Maybe it's a different size, maybe it's a different shape, but it, uses a lot of the same functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this lifecycle, or not this lifecycle, this ECO through a couple of processes. And this routing allows me to determine who's responsible for what portions of this process. So I'm going to pause this for a second. This looks very, a flow chart, right? It looks kind of similar to the lifecycle stuff that we had on the previous section. But this is the formalized ECO process, right? You might be doing this already in paper form or maybe email form, right? Someone has a request, they need to make a change to the document. So I guess the most common thing is we've got a field failure. Maybe we've got a couple of warranty issues that came through. What are we going to do to edit this design so that that doesn't happen in the future, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create create that change order. And I'm going to run it through the process, right, to open it, submit it to work, review it, and then ultimately close it at the end. So let's go ahead and look at that process. I'm going to go ahead and submit this change order request to go through, right? And so what happens is that gets sent to the responsible engineer to approve that that is a change order that is worthy of actually happening. They can go ahead and cancel that. They can go ahead and move that all the way to the approved state by submitting and forcing the approval, right? Or they can go ahead and submit it to engineering, right? So we're going to go ahead and accept this new work and we're going to route this to engineering so they can make their copy design, so on and so forth. So the engineering person will go ahead and make their changes. They can see all of the history behind the change order, what was requested of them, things along those lines. And I'm going to go ahead and have this state change to work in progress. Because I'm the engineer, I'm going to go ahead and work on this file. So now this item went to Rev B and I'm in the work state. So what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to make edits to the file, make changes, do whatever I need to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Once I submit it, the person responsible for reviewing it is generally a person of managerial status. And they're going to go ahead and approve this file, right? And as you can see, you've got full history of this ECO, right? All of these comments saying, hey, it was created, it got opened, it was worked on, and it went to review, right? And it's now approved, right? So these comments give you a full history of this ECO. It's all searchable. It's all traceable, right? So you've got full digital, I guess, paths to exactly what happened, what decisions were made during these processes, so on and so forth. So it's easy to understand what changes were made in the past, and why those decisions were made in the first place, or who approved those decisions. If it breaks again, someone's in trouble. So we're going to release this to manufacturing. And when we release the ECO, it's automatically going to release the file. And so that gets sent to manufacturing. You can even get really fancy with this. And on the ECO states, you can go ahead and start sending emails, so on and so forth to people. And I think that's where it gets really powerful.
Yeah, and most of the times our customers, maybe this is the first approach to PDM or Vault, is to get this change request implemented. Everything is there. You just need to associate every stages to a person, and that's it. You have the history of what happened. Everything is documented, so it's easier for a company to keep track of those changes as well.
Absolutely, it's all about the visibility, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to see what was made, what the decisions were for making that change. You want to be able to track everything. And that's something that gets, like we're talking about, it's like people lose files all the time. I'm guilty of it too, is I put critical information in emails, right? And then I'm searching my Outlook. It's like, okay, what's the keyword to this? What do I got to find? And the same thing goes for engineering data a lot of the times, right? Is like, if you just put it on some drive on your computer, you might be able to find it, but it might take some time. Whereas, when you've got high-level search functionalities and you can go through past change orders and stuff, it's really easy to find these things.
And everything is indexed as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All the properties are searchable as long as you get the properties.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump on this third one. And this one is one of my favorite ones, is the copy design function, right? Is inefficient copy design process results in duplicate data and broken file relationships. And so I know that reuse has become a problem for a lot of organizations in the past. This is where we get the duplicate files. This is where we get duplicate files. We get broken relationships. We get people dragging and dropping folders, renaming stuff. Yeah. And then maybe you made a new assembly, but you broke your old one. this is not what we want, right? And so with copy design wizards, right, reuse has become like a one-step operation, right? So you just go into your vault, you select the top level assembly. Every file reference within that assembly as a child is picked up, right? And so what happens is you can choose what of those files you want to copy, what files you want to reuse, what files you want to remove from that particular new project that you want to create. And then you define schema for renaming those copied files, right? So you're going to copy files, but you're going to rename them because you want unique file names. You don't want it to get confused with stuff from the old assembly, things along those lines. And imagine doing that with let's say 1,000-part assembly that you have to replace even, let's say 10% of it, 5% of it, right? 5% of files being changed in a 1,000-part assembly is still 50 files. And I don't want to redo 50 file relationships or rename 50 files manually. That sucks. Save as 50 files? No, thank you. So I will not be doing that. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like within Vault. It's a really powerful video. I love this one. So I'm going to go ahead and select this top level assembly, and I'm going to go ahead and start making some changes. So let me go ahead and select the Vault location that this copy is going to go to, and start selecting some of these files. So I'm going to start selecting files through here to reuse. I'm going to go ahead and select more files to reuse. And then I'm going to start renaming a couple of files here as well. So I've copied these files over, and on the right-hand side, you can see that selection box on the right-hand side labeled numbering is getting bigger and bigger all this time. I'm gonna select all 122 of these part files, and I'm gonna go ahead and change them to unique names. And so what does that mean is I wanna go ahead and make a copy, and I'm gonna go ahead and change that. So it's got really powerful functionality, right? Maybe my project number is 2019-01, and I'm simply want to change that for this new project to 2019-02. Well, I don't want to rename hundreds of files after I copy them. So what you can do is you can do a find and replace of that text and just replace it. And here on the right-hand side, all of the file names changed to 2019-02, really powerful. We can go ahead and do the same thing for a couple of these other assembly files as well. I'm going to do a find and replace of this project number, right? The project number is 00 there on the right-hand side there. I'm going to change that to 02 because it's going to the 02 project. Do a replace all. As you can see, all these files are getting renamed. Really simple. And I just renamed, what was that, like 100 files or something? And I'm going to go ahead and do from the copy design here. And so what happened is, hey, I'm going to go ahead and look at this destination folder. And this destination folder is going to have all my project information. As you can see, all of these part numbers are 2019-02. So these are copies of the original assembly files and the part files and the drawing files, but they're not associated to that original drawing. They're associated to this new one, or this new assembly. They're associated to the assembly, and everything changed. And so let's go ahead and open this in Inventor and take a look at what that looks like. So we've got the assembly file, it's open. We can go ahead and make our changes, and any changes made to the new files in here won't affect the original assembly. And that, I think, is the key here, is you don't want to do that. And you also don't want to spend a bunch of time renaming and relinking files. If you can look at the bottom right-hand corner, just a quick Inventor tip for you guys, there's 875 total occurrences open in this document, right? So 875 parts or assemblies, things along those lines, are open in this document, 218 of them being unique. So, like I said, if you want to change even 10% of that, I don't want to rename 20 files and generate copies, do saved as, and get really fancy with it. That would take me quite a long time. Whereas what we did with the copy design function took a couple of minutes, maybe, and we generated this whole assembly. So there's a lot of time savings to be had. You remove human error, and I think that's really key here. Is I make mistakes. I'm sure you guys make mistakes sometimes. Mark.
Yeah, just ask my wife.
it's your life? Nice. But you want to alleviate any possibility of making those human errors, right? And so with intelligent functionality like the copy design tool, you can eliminate that completely, right? And you just alleviate risk for your organization. You don't send the wrong things out, and you get it right the first time. So just a couple of things I want to note, and boom, you've got your full assembly with all of your new references and a bunch of new files that you didn't have before, right? I just generated 100 CAD files on the fly. Crazy. Crazy stuff. Anything else you got to add for the copy design function and some of the duplicate files, Mark?
No, what is important is just exactly, you need to search and make sure that you don't necessarily copy files you don't need. So anything that's a library component should stay there and not duplicate that. But yeah, copy design is key to save you a bunch of time.
Absolutely, yeah, and like you said with library files and stuff, right? Those are pretty standard. You don't want to copy those, but
No.
for some of these one-offs that you need to change the dimensions on.
Yeah.
For the next iteration of the assembly, it's a super powerful tool for that. So, and my absolute favorite is data is overwritten by engineers working on the same file. So raise your electronic hands if you have had this happen to you before. I'm sure it's almost everybody.
Both of them.
Yeah, people are raising their hands in the chat right now.
Yeah.
It happens, right? It's like, I'm working on this file. I didn't know this happened to me a lot in college, right? I'm working with my team on a PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to make this final presentation for our professors. And I'm working on the PowerPoint presentation because I just want to make it look better, right? Maybe add a couple of animations here or there, maybe make some of the imagery look better. Little did I know is my colleague on the other side of campus also doing the same thing. So it became a who saves last kind of functionality, right? Because we're working on like OneDrive or Box or something along those lines. And it happens, right? And so you want to be able to alleviate that possibility. The first thing being, let's take this stuff off of network drives. Let's take the stuff off of Dropbox, Box, whatever, Google Drive, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And start using some simple functionality of check-in, check-out, reserve files, things along those lines. And so PDM solutions, right, they remove all those concerns of overwriting files by adding the simple functionality, right? It's simple, it's fundamental. This is the first thing I teach people when they start using Vault is how to reserve files to themselves or remove the reservation. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. This is my Vault, and for all intents and purposes, we're going to go ahead and edit this project file. So for those of you who aren't familiar, a project file contains a lot of the configuration information for your Inventor application. And if you're using Vault, you want a Vault-specific project file. You generally want to lock that thing because you don't want to change people's configurations through the company or allow them to do so. You want to be able to standardize it. But in this case, I need to make a global change to that project file. So what am I going to do? I can't edit this file because it's released. You can see the lock on the left-hand side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert this to CAD. Just kidding. I don't know why I hovered over that for so long. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the state. I'm going to go from released to work in progress, right? Maybe I want to change the template location or the design data location on the project file to reference somewhere else on the network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open that up. But first, I'm going to go ahead and change the field in Vault to be able to see who the file is checked out to. Something really important. I like turning this on. And let's fast forward here real quick. So I'm going to do a get of this file actually. And I'm going to pause here for a second after I do this get. Right? Is when you do a get, a lot of people ask, and I'm sure this is a question that maybe if you're like a CAD administrator at your company that you get as well, is does a get do a checkout of the file? Because I'm getting the file. What does that mean? What's the difference between a get and a checkout? So a get is going to download that version of the file onto your local workspace, but it's not necessarily going to check out the file. As you can see, I have the get functionality open right now, but it's showing me a download for one file and a checkout for 0. So by basic functionality, a get is not going to reserve the file to yourself, but if you expand some of the get functionality, which I'm going to do here by selecting the 2 right arrows here on the right-hand side of this window, I have the ability to check out that file. So maybe you've selected multiple files or you've selected an assembly with a bunch of children. If you expand this, you can go ahead and go to this last column here and start selecting the files you actually want to reserve to yourself. So they're definitely not exclusive. You can use the get functionality to check out files, especially if you want to be able to look at more information in here, like these columns, so on and so forth. So as you can see, it changed, right? After I checked that box, it went from checkout 1 and download 1. So I'm going to go ahead and continue through here. I'm going to check this file out. I'm going to add a comment. And this is something that I think is really important once I do that. And as you can see, check out by that field to administrator. And for those of you who don't know, really key thing, quick tip for Vault, is the information in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is always really important in Autodesk applications. In this case, there's three really key functions in the bottom right-hand side, right? The first one being, what is the server name for the Vault? Where is it located? If you don't know where your Vault server is or what that machine is, you can look in the bottom right-hand side and figure that out yourself. This case, it's localhost, right? And that's, for me, that's the computer that I'm working on. The second one is the name of the Vault that you're working in. In this case, it's this Oscar data set that I'm working in that has its own Vault. And then the third one is who I'm logged in as. And for those of you who are CAD administrators at your organizations, you might have your basic username, and then maybe you log in as an administrator as well. If you need to know which one you're logged in at any given time, this is probably the fastest way to find out, is down here in the bottom corner. So just a quick tip for you all. Once I've checked out this file, I can go ahead and make changes to it. And while it's checked out to me, no one else can check out the file. And if anyone else does a get to it and tries to edit it, the file will show up as read-only. And it understands that, hey, this file is reserved to somebody else. You can go ahead and get this file. You can download it to your computer, but you cannot edit it because it is in a read-only state. And that's something that the PDM system, in this case, Vault, manages for me. So I don't have to worry about Mark checking out or getting this file, me checking it back in, and him just immediately overwriting on top of it. And then all of my changes were for nothing, right? So keep that in mind. So once I've made my changes, I can go ahead and check this file back in. Once I check this file in, I can make a couple of comments. And this is something that I see very underused, is the comment section for check-in. There's some options to delete the working copies or keep files checked out, and I can check that file back in. If I made any actual changes to the file, I'd show up as a C, and I've checked it in, but because I didn't make any changes to this, I didn't make another version. So now that it's checked back in, it's open for anyone else to get it again, right? Anyone can do the other checkouts. It opens the reservation to anybody. And so the analogy I like to use in this case, right, is like a library book, right? Check in and check out functionality. I'm gonna go to the library. I know it's an ancient concept, is going to a library and checking out a book. I give them my library card, they scan it, I get my book. The only person who can read that book while I have it checked out is me, or anyone who I give it to, I guess. But I'm the person who's reading that book. When I go ahead and return that book, it lets anyone else come to the library and check out that same book, right? But during the time that I have the book checked out to myself, no one else can read it. No one else can check out the file. So that's an analogy I like to use in this case.
Yeah, that's great.
It kind of works. In some cases it doesn't, but that's just how I like to explain it sometimes. So once you check that file in, anyone can see it, but it prevents you from overwriting files on top of each other. And that's really key, because that happens. And that's the last thing you want to do, is to redo a bunch of work that we worked really hard on to get it in there. And then because someone else was working on it at the same time, it failed. So I know we're going to get these questions. So I want to have these matrices up to be able to answer them. So what versions of Vault do what? What did we talk about today that's covered in certain versions of Vault? And so Mark, do you want to go through this one and I'll go through the next one?
Yeah, sure. So what's important is that Vault is a security solution. So it will allow you to check in and check out files. So everything that we discussed, what Nigel showed us, is available from Vault Basic to Vault Professional. What's very interesting is that you have access to backup and restore your files, and this is much needed. I mean, I'm sure you went through this a couple of times using Windows share folders and whatnot, but having a backup for your Vault is essential. Even though we have all the security connections and we have everything available to us to prevent those problems, you still need to back up your files. And everything is centralized and localized in one central location. You don't have to worry about losing data or anything like this. We work on the same single source of truth, and this is very interesting. Of course, if you need a little bit more advanced knowledge, then the Vault Workgroup and Vault Professional will help you with this. And if you ever need to connect with your enterprise solution, ERP and MRP, then Vault Professional is there for you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries. I had something quick to add too, right? Is Vault Basic, if you're on the collection, which a lot of the customers and people who are on this call have the collection already, you have Vault Basic allocated to yourselves already. So definitely start using it today. If you have any questions about how to set that up, let us know. But I think a really big differentiator, right, is Vault Basic is for CAD people, right?
Absolutely.
It's a system for those people using strictly CAD tools. When you want to start expanding the use of Vault to people in sales, engineering, management, things along those lines that maybe don't work in a CAD tool on a daily basis, or maybe you have some people who need to put Word documents or emails or spreadsheets into the Vault itself, you're going to want to start using Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional to be able to perform those functions. And more often than not, Vault Professional is what you want to go to anyways. Because like what Mark said is some of the business system integration, which we'll highlight here in the next slide here, right? And we'll jump through this. The business system integration stuff is only in Vault Pro. And what he means by that is your organization might have an ERP or an MRP system. And the most important piece of data that goes into those business systems is bill of materials information, right? That's more often than not what goes to those systems. And a lot of times that's manually entered. You maybe get a spreadsheet off of your CAD file, and you need to manually enter that data, all of those part numbers, so on and so forth, to that ERP, MRP system. Well, you can build a bridge as opposed to manually entering that. Build a bridge between your CAD or your PDM system, right, Vault in this case, and your ERP system, so that it automatically pushes bill of materials information directly from your assembly. You know it's correct every time. There's no human error, and then push that directly to your business system. So really key there. So like we're talking about the copy design wizard, it's a little bit different in Vault Basic versus the other versions, but it pretty much does the same exact thing. That's available in all the versions of Vault. And then the revision and change history that we're talking about before, when we're going through those life cycles, that stuff is reserved to the higher levels of Vault. So without further ado, let's move on to questions.
And I'll use our next webinar as a segue for the questions.
Absolutely.
One of the questions we got was about field manufacturing data. Now, this is, and it could be so geeky, and I apologize in advance once again. Field manufacturing data, in my opinion, should be more on the PLM side, on the product lifecycle management side, and on a PDM side, because most of the times the design and engineering or the technical work is done internally, and it's shipped to be assembled or maybe delivered somewhere else in a field or in a company or anywhere else. When problems do occur, I think those are change requests most of the times, or maybe also preventive action. So preventive action are PLM based, so you can take pictures and fill in information and all this. But if PLM is a little bit too pushed, I would say that you could also use Vault to manage all those, because we do have an ECO system inside of it. You can manage pretty much any kind of files using Vault. So pictures, Excel spreadsheet, Word document and whatnot, you could use it as well. But you know, I would be curious to know a little bit more about this, and maybe this is not the right time for that. But yeah, we do have solutions for all of these.
Absolutely, Tim. Yeah, let us know. Let us know. And that's something that I like having that conversation, right? Is PLM versus PDM. They both start with P, and they're both three-letter words, but they're very different in their functionality. And if that's something you need some help kind of explaining the difference between, I know I needed a lot of explaining by some of my friends here at the company as to what the key differences are and what each application or set of applications is for. Definitely let me know, but they're definitely not mutually exclusive. Generally, our customers use both, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, something interesting. We kept saying revisions and versions, and those are nice rhymes if you're into rap or whatnot. But there's a big difference between all of those. So version is every time you check in a file, so you're working on it, it creates a version. Once you're done and you are approving or releasing those documents, those becomes revision. Now, in a nutshell, I like to say that version is what the technical folks are seeing, and revision is what the shop floor or the production people are seeing. So those two should be very, very different. And because of permissions and whatnot, I don't think the shop floor should see what version you're working on, but they should only see the revisions, which means the release documents.
Absolutely. And so revisions can be seen as like a milestone, right? Is the version is like, hey, I'm working on this document for the next 3 weeks. I'm going to check it into Vault every day to make sure I save my progress, right? Each of those check-ins into the Vault is a version. Once I've completed all of my work and I've reached this milestone, I release it, generates a revision, and that's the revision that I want to be able to take a look at, right? The released version would be, I guess in that case, the revision that the people on the shop floor see.
Yeah. Nice way of putting it. Sorry. We have a question about items. Can we link documents to assemblies? Absolutely. You can link, you can create shortcuts for it. You can do everything with items. I like to talk about items for everything you don't 3D model, like Loctite or grease, shrink wrap, all these things that you do need for an assembly, but no one will ever 3D model. That's a good item, or that's a good thing to put in items. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like the item is just a container for information. And because you don't have a CAD model for things like grease or your assembly documents and things along those lines, maybe you have maybe you have a PDF of your assembly documents. You can totally attach that to the item that contains the top level assembly, so that when they look at that item, hey, I've got all of my supporting documentation in here. Maybe you've got the sales order for that item that you want to maintain through, you want to keep the sales order for the assembly that you're building kind of attached as well, and you can do it that way. So you can see where everything is being used, things along those lines. We went over that a little bit in the last session that we did that went over the people as well. So take a look at that. And if you have any more questions, let us know.
We have another great question. Can copy design be configured to always keep the library parts from being copied? Now, that's interesting. We could have permissions set to folders and whatnot, but you want to keep that open, because sometimes the library components can become, a customized part, or then that customized part will be set or back into the library folders. So you can also restrict very much the vault, but I mean, going with training and making sure that you have great mentorship for Vault, I would leave the permission as open as possible, so you don't break people's creativity or just innovation. Yeah, that was a weird answer. I apologize.
Absolutely, I totally understand. Yeah, you want to leave it open for the most part, because like you said, like sometimes those library parts, maybe you need a version of that library part, but you need to add a couple of design features, right? Maybe you need to add you have a library part, you need to add another bracket to it or another hole so you can mount something else to it. It's a library part, but it's slightly edited. So you might want to copy that part actually in that assembly so you can make the change. So keep that in mind as well. There's another question from Will. They have projects handled by a team of drafters, right? Does an ECO require the work to go to a single named person, or can it go to a pool? Definitely can go to a pool, because sometimes you need multiple people to approve it. Sometimes you need it to go to a group of people, and whoever's got the bandwidth to pick it up does it. So keep that in mind. It can go to a group of people. It doesn't have to go to a single person. And then email notifications can also go to a group of people as well. So
I think that's it.
Yeah, I didn't see anything else there, Mark. Again, I'd like to thank everyone. This is the last AVA of the calendar year, 2019. We did, I want to say, like 47. I remember, if I counted correctly, it's like 47 AVAs for this calendar year. I definitely want to thank you all for joining us each and every week for this. If we didn't have the community behind us, we wouldn't be doing these, and I wouldn't have something to do every Thursday at 10 a.m. So definitely thank you all for being part of this awesome community. Hopefully we're giving value to the CAD community out there, the Autodesk manufacturing community as well. And we're helping you guys innovate your designs and your work processes as well. So any feedback you have for us would be awesome. You can go ahead and send that through emails and stuff to myself or my colleagues. We like hearing back from you guys. If there's anything you want to see in the upcoming calendar year, I have a pretty open schedule after the first couple of months of the year. If you want to see some stuff specifically, let me know. If you want to see Mark back again, you will for the first AVA of the year. But if there's more stuff you want to see us do, let us know, right? And the more we hear from you guys, the more you can kind of direct the way all of these sessions go for you guys as customers and viewers of AVA. So
those are driven by you.
Absolutely. It's the community that drives us. I don't pick these topics myself. I let the being driven by the rest of my team here and the requests we get from you guys. So happy holidays to you all. Mark, again, thank you for being with us. I'll give you a call later today so we can start talking about the next session. And I'm excited to see what we've got coming up for next year. And we'll see you on the other side of 2019 into 2020. I'm excited. So thanks all for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Mark, thank you. And we'll see you on the other side.
Bye-bye.